The Galactic Council chambers had never felt so empty, despite being filled with representatives from 47 different species. Ambassador Zethkar of the Braxian Confederacy shifted uncomfortably in his crystalline seat, the familiar weight of human presence notably absent from the circular hall. Where the Terran delegation once sat, now only empty chairs remained, their blue cushions untouched for the past 3 standard months. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Supreme Chancellor Mordun of the Hegemony called the session to order. His 4 eyes swept across the assembly, deliberately avoiding the vacant human section. The massive being, standing nearly 3 meters tall with skin like polished obsidian, had presided over the council for 2 decades. Never had he seen such tension in the chambers. Fellow beings, Mordun's voice resonated through the translation devices embedded in each representative seat. We gather today to address this situation that has developed following the departure of the human delegation. A ripple of nervous energy passed through the assembled aliens. The Kalari representative, her feathered crest flickering between blue and orange in distress, spoke first. Chancellor, we must discuss the implications. The humans didn't just leave the council. They've withdrawn from all galactic affairs entirely. Zethkar found himself nodding, his serpentine neck undulating with emotion. The Vraxians had always maintained cordial relations with the humans, finding their pragmatic approach to diplomacy refreshing among the often theatrical displays of other species. Ambassador Silthara speaks truth. He hissed, his forked tongue tasting the recycled air of the chamber. Our trade routes through human space have gone completely silent. Not hostile, not restricted, simply empty. The word hung in the air like a curse. Empty. That was exactly what human space had become. Ships that ventured into the vast territory once bustling with Terran activity found nothing but automated beacons directing them to alternative routes around human worlds. No communication, no acknowledgement, no triats. Just redirection. Chancellor Mordun's expression darkened, though few species could read the subtle shifts in hegemony facial features. The humans were becoming too influential, he rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Their rapid expansion, their technological advancement, their presumptuous attitudes toward established galactic law. Perhaps this withdrawal is for the best. The statement triggered an immediate reaction. Representatives began speaking over one another, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. The insectoid, thresh-high delegate clicked and chittered frantically, while the gaseous luminary representatives' form flickered with agitation. Ambassador Valterra of the aquatic depths rose from her specially designed water-filled seating area, her gills fluttering as she processed the oxygenated liquid. With respect, Chancellor, the human withdrawal has created significant problems. They were our primary suppliers of rare Earth elements from their asteroid mining operations. Our manufacturing sectors are already feeling the impact. Zethkar had expected this. The humans have been remarkably efficient at resource extraction and distribution, often undercutting established galactic cartels by significant margins. Their absence had created supply chain disruptions across multiple sectors. Furthermore, Valterra continued, her webbed hands gesturing emphatically. Human medical research was advancing treatments for genetic disorders affecting at least 12 species represented in this chamber. Those research partnerships have simply vanished. The hegemony chancellor's 4 eyes narrowed. The humans were becoming too comfortable dictating terms to species far older and more experienced than their juvenile civilization. Their attitude toward the Galactic Accords was increasingly problematic. This brought nods from several representatives, particularly those from the older civilizations. The humans had indeed been vocal critics of certain aspects of galactic law, particularly regulations they viewed as unnecessarily bureaucratic or culturally biased. Their tendency to propose amendments and reforms had irritated many established powers. Zethkar remembered the heated debates. Humans possessed an uncomfortable habit of asking pointed questions about the historical basis for certain laws, often revealing that regulations have been crafted to benefit specific species at the expense of others. Ambassador Sarah Chun had been particularly skilled at dissecting legal frameworks, finding inconsistencies and loopholes that embarrassed senior council members. But their contributions cannot be ignored. Interjected Carr then, of the Silicon Coalition, his rocky form grinding against his seat as he shifted position. Human cultural exchange programs were among the most popular in galactic history. Their entertainment media, their music, their literature, these had begun influencing artistic expression across dozens of worlds. The truth of this statement was undeniable. Human creativity had proven remarkably adaptable and appealing to diverse alien sensibilities. Their films were being translated for species with completely different visual spectrums. Their music adapted for beings with hearing ranges far beyond human capability. The sudden absence of new human cultural content had left a noticeable void in galactic entertainment. Their military capabilities were also substantial, added General Thrackmore of the warrior clans, his scarred features twisted in what might have been respect or concern. Human tactical innovation was impressive for such a young species. Their integration of technology with biological capabilities produced remarkably effective results. An uncomfortable silence followed this observation. The humans had never been aggressive toward other council members, but their military exercises and defensive capabilities have been closely monitored by galactic intelligence services. Their rapid advancement in warfare technology had been both impressive and slightly concerning to established military powers. Zethkar found his thoughts drifting to his last conversation with Ambassador Chun. The human had been surprisingly calm when delivering what amounted to a resignation letter from the Terran Federation. No anger, no dramatic speeches, no triats. Simply a polite notification that humanity was withdrawing from galactic affairs to focus on internal development. We appreciate the opportunities for exchange and cooperation that Council membership has provided, Chun had said, her brown eyes holding an expression Zethkar had struggled to interpret. However, we believe it's time for humanity to pursue independent development. We wish the Council continued success in its endeavors. The diplomatic language had been perfectly correct, even gracious. But there had been something in Chin's tone, something in the way she avoided eye contact with certain representatives that suggested deeper motivations for the withdrawal. Chancellor Mordun called for order as the debate grew more heated. The immediate concern is practical, he declared. We must address the economic and logistical disruptions caused by human withdrawal. Trade routes must be reorganized, supply chains rebuilt, research partnerships established with other species. With respect, Chancellor, Zethkar found himself speaking, his voice carrying across the chamber. Perhaps we should first understand why the humans chose to withdraw so completely. This was not a gradual disengagement. They ceased all communication simultaneously across their entire territory. Such coordination suggests careful planning and strong motivation. Several representatives nodded at this observation. The humans had indeed withdrawn with remarkable efficiency and completeness. Not a single human remained in council space. Not one research station continued operating in partnership with alien species. Not one trade vessel maintained its regular routes. The withdrawal had been total and immediate once announced. Ambassador Silthara's feathers flickered red with agitation. My government has been trying to establish communication with human authorities for weeks. Our messages are received. We know this because our transmission confirmations are acknowledged, but there are no responses. No explanations, no negotiations, nothing. Same with the aquatic depths, Volterra added, her gills working rapidly in distress. We've sent diplomatic envoys to the edge of human space. They're met by automated systems that politely but firmly direct them elsewhere. No human officials, no meetings, no dialogue. The pattern was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The humans hadn't simply left the council in anger or frustration. They had systematically severed every connection with galactic civilization, creating what appeared to be a complete and impermeable barrier around their territory. General Thrackmore's scarred features twisted thoughtfully. Military reconnaissance suggests human defensive capabilities remain active. Their border monitoring systems are clearly functional, as are their automated response protocols. But there's no human presence detected in any of the monitoring. This revelation sent a chill through the assembly. If human defense systems were operational, but no humans were detected managing them, what did that imply about their technological capabilities? Had they achieved full automation of their military infrastructure? Zethkar recalled rumors that had circulated among intelligence communities about human artificial intelligence development. Unlike most galactic species, which had developed AI cautiously due to historical conflicts with artificial beings, humans had approached the technology with remarkable boldness. Their AI systems were reportedly more sophisticated and integrated into their society than anything seen elsewhere in the galaxy. Perhaps, suggested the gaseous Luminari representative, their translated voice carrying an ethereal quality. The humans have not withdrawn for political reasons. Perhaps they face some internal crisis that requires their complete attention. This possibility had been discussed in private conversations among various ambassadors. Maybe humanity was dealing with a plague, a civil war, or some other catastrophe that necessitated isolation. But intelligence reports suggested no evidence of internal strife or disaster in human space. Chancellor Moore Dunn's expression remained stern. Regardless of their reasons, we must adapt to their absence. The humans were never essential to galactic civilization. We functioned for millennia before their arrival, and we will continue to thrive without them. But even as he spoke these words, Moore Dunn knew they rang hollow. The humans had integrated themselves into galactic civilization with remarkable speed and efficiency. Their absence was creating ripple effects that were becoming more apparent daily. The economic impacts were most immediate. Human mining operations had provided crucial materials for manufacturing across dozens of worlds. Their agricultural techniques had improved food production efficiency for species with compatible biology. Their transportation systems had optimized shipping routes throughout their territory, routes that now sat empty and unused. More concerning were the technological partnerships that had been abruptly severed. Human researchers had been collaborating with alien scientists on projects ranging from faster-than-light communication to genetic medicine to environmental restoration. These projects had simply stopped, leaving alien researchers stranded with incomplete data and failed experiments. Ambassador Zethkar raised a clawed hand for attention. Chancellor, perhaps we should consider the possibility that the humans' withdrawal was motivated by something we said or did. If so, diplomatic outreach might resolve the situation. This suggestion triggered immediate protests from several representatives. The idea that the mighty Galactic Council should apologize to or negotiate with a withdrawn member species struck many as inappropriate and undignified. The humans made their choice, declared Ambassador Crixtal of the Mining Consortium, his rocky form grinding with agitation. If they wish to isolate themselves from galactic civilization, that is their decision. We should not dignify their dramatic exit by pleading for their return. But others disagreed. The practical impacts of human withdrawal were becoming impossible to ignore. Trade flows had shifted dramatically, creating winners and losers among member species. Some worlds that had benefited from human partnerships now faced economic difficulties, while others saw opportunities to fill the void left by human businesses. The session continued for hours, with representatives debating everything from immediate economic concerns to longer-term strategic implications. Some argued for aggressive action to force human re-engagement, though they were vague about what form such action might take. Others suggested patient waiting, believing the humans would eventually realize the disadvantages of isolation and seek to return to galactic society. Zethkar found himself increasingly troubled by the discussion. Something about the human withdrawal felt fundamentally different from typical diplomatic disputes. The completeness of their disengagement, the efficiency of their systems maintaining border security without apparent human oversight, the absolute silence in response to all communication attempts. It all suggested something more profound than simple political disagreement. As the session finally adjourned without reaching any concrete decisions, representatives began filing out of the chamber in small groups, continuing their debates in the corridors. Zethkar lingered, staring at the empty human seating area. Ambassador Chun had always sat in the third chair from the left. Her dark hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, her hands frequently taking notes on a tablet device. She had possessed an remarkable ability to listen to complex debates and then ask the one question that cut straight to the heart of an issue. During his tenure as Vraxian ambassador, Zethkar had grown to respect and even like the human delegation. They were direct without being rude, practical without being cold, innovative without being reckless. Their questions had often been uncomfortable, but they were usually the right questions to ask. Now the chamber felt diminished without human presence. The debates seemed less sharp, the solutions less creative, the perspectives more narrow. Whatever had motivated humanity's withdrawal, their absence was already changing the character of galactic governance. As Zethkar finally made his way toward the exit, he passed Chancellor Mordun, speaking quietly with several other senior representatives. The hegemony leader's four eyes glowed with satisfaction as he spoke. The humans were becoming too influential too quickly, Mordun was saying. Their withdrawal eliminates a potential challenge to established order. Perhaps it's time to remind ourselves that galactic civilization managed quite well before their arrival. But Zethkar wasn't convinced. Something in the way the humans had left, so complete, so final, so utterly without explanation, suggested they might have reached a conclusion about galactic civilization that the Council wasn't prepared to hear. Over the following days, reports continued arriving from across the galaxy. Human colonies remained inhabited and active, but they had severed all external communications. Human ships had returned to Terran space and ceased all interstellar travel outside their territory. Human research stations had closed their doors to alien visitors and staff. Most mysteriously, the automated systems managing human space traffic seemed to be operating with unprecedented efficiency. Ships attempting to enter human territory were redirected so smoothly and politely that many pilots initially thought they were interacting with human controllers. Only after multiple attempts did it become clear that the redirections were being handled entirely by artificial systems. The implications of this technological capability were staggering. If humans had achieved complete automation of their territorial defense and traffic management, what else had they automated? What level of artificial intelligence were they operating with? Zethkar found himself spending long hours reviewing historical records of human participation in the Council. Their questions, their proposals, their objections to various regulations and procedures. Slowly, a pattern began emerging that troubled him deeply. The humans hadn't withdrawn because of any single incident or decision. They had been systematically documenting and questioning the fundamental structures of galactic civilization for months, perhaps years. Their withdrawal appeared to be the result of a careful evaluation that had reached an unfavorable conclusion. But a conclusion about what? What had the humans discovered or decided that had led them to completely sever ties with galactic society? And, perhaps more importantly, what were they doing now in their self-imposed isolation? The questions haunted Zethkar as he prepared his reports for the Vraxian Confederacy. Something told him that humanity's quiet departure was not the end of their story, but rather the beginning of something that would have profound implications for the entire galaxy. The empty chairs in the council chamber seemed to mock the ongoing debates about trade routes and supply chains. Whatever the humans were planning in their isolation, Zethkar suspected it would make such concerns seem trivial in comparison. As he transmitted his report to Vraxian High Command, Zethkar included a recommendation that surprised even him. Maintain careful monitoring of human space, and prepare for the possibility that their withdrawal might be temporary. Something in his diplomatic instincts told him that humanity's story with the galaxy was far from over. The Council had reached its breaking point with human questions and innovations. But perhaps, Zethkar worried, humanity had reached its breaking point with the Council first. And if that was true, then their quiet departure might be the calm before a storm that would reshape galactic civilization entirely. In the silence of his private office, surrounded by diplomatic documents and communication devices that could reach any corner of the galaxy except human space, Ambassador Zethkar found himself hoping he was wrong. But his decades of diplomatic experience told him that hope might not be enough. 6 months had passed since the human withdrawal, and the ripple effects were spreading throughout galactic civilization like cracks in ice. Ambassador Zethkar stood before the massive viewing window in his private quarters aboard the Vraxian diplomatic vessel, watching cargo ships lumber past with half-empty holds. The bustling space traffic that had characterized this sector during the height of human trade activity had dwindled to a fraction of its former volume. The door chimed softly behind him. "Enter," he called, not turning from the window. His aide, a young Vraxian named Sikitar, slithered into the room carrying a data tablet that glowed with urgent priority markers. "Ambassador, we've received reports from the Outer Rim territories," Sikitar announced, his own serpentine form shorter and more slender than Zethkar's mature physique. "The situation is becoming critical in several sectors." Zethkar finally turned from a window, his vertical pupils adjusting to the dimmer interior lighting. "Show me the summary." The data painted a picture that was worse than even Zethkar's pessimistic projections had anticipated. The Kalari worlds were experiencing severe shortages of rare minerals essential for their atmosphere processors. The Silicon Coalition was facing a crisis in their quantum computing research after the loss of human computational frameworks. Most concerning of all, 3 separate pirate syndicates had moved into territories previously secured by human patrol fleets. "The economic disruption is severe," Sikitar continued, scrolling through the data. "But there are other changes that are harder to quantify. Cultural exchange programs between numerous species have slowed dramatically. Scientific collaboration rates have dropped by 60%. Even interspecies artistic projects are failing to gain the momentum they once had." Zethkar absorbed this information with growing concern. The humans had been more than just another member species. They had become a kind of connective tissue in galactic civilization, facilitating relationships and projects between other species who might never have collaborated otherwise. "What about direct attempts to contact human authorities?" Zethkar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "No change. All communication attempts are acknowledged by automated systems and politely redirected. No human officials have responded to any diplomatic overtures from any species. It's as if human civilization has become entirely automated at its borders while maintaining complete internal opacity." The implications of this continued to trouble Zethkar. The level of artificial intelligence required to manage such complex diplomatic and logistical functions without human oversight was staggering. It suggested technological capabilities far beyond what most galactic civilizations had achieved. His contemplation was interrupted by an emergency communication alert. The holographic display activated automatically, revealing the concerned features of Admiral Vexera from Vraxian High Command. Her scaled features were tense with worry. "Ambassador Zethkar, we have a developing situation that requires immediate attention. One of our deep space exploration vessels has encountered something unusual at the edge of human space." Zethkar straightened, his diplomatic instincts immediately alert. "What kind of encounter, Admiral?" The exploration ship Depth Seeker was conducting a routine survey mission in a neutral zone adjacent to human territory. They detected massive energy signatures consistent with large-scale construction activities. When they attempted to investigate, they were met by a human vessel. This was the first confirmed sighting of an active human ship since the withdrawal. Zethkar felt his pulse quicken. What was the nature of the interaction? That's what makes this significant, Ambassador. The human ship didn't just redirect them or issue warnings. It actually engaged in limited communication. The human captain was willing to speak directly with our exploration team, though the conversation was brief and somewhat cryptic. Admiral Vexera transmitted the recorded conversation, and Zethkar listened intently to the exchange between the Vraxian explorer captain and the mysterious human vessel. The human voice was calm and professional, with none of the warmth that had characterized human diplomatic communications during their council membership. Vraxian vessel, you are approaching restricted construction zones. For your safety and the integrity of our operations, we must ask you to maintain your current distance. The Vraxian captain had responded with standard diplomatic protocols. This is Captain Morthek of the Vraxian Confederacy Exploration Vessel Depth Seeker. We mean no intrusion and respect your territorial boundaries. May we inquire about the nature of the construction activities? Our sensors indicate projects of unprecedented scale. There had been a long pause before the human responded. Captain Morthek, humanity has undertaken significant infrastructure development projects. These activities require complete isolation to prevent interference and ensure safety. Your curiosity is understandable, but we cannot permit closer investigation at this time. Are you constructing new colonies or military installations? Captain Morthek had asked, his diplomatic training evident in the careful phrasing. Another pause, then. We are building the future, Captain. Nothing more can be discussed at this time. Please convey to the Galactic Council that humanity's withdrawal from galactic affairs remains complete and permanent. We wish all species prosperity, but our paths have diverged. The communication had ended there, leaving the Vraxian exploration team with more questions than answers, but also with tantalizing hints about human activities in their isolated territory. Admiral Vexera's image leaned forward in the holographic display. Ambassador, our long-range sensors detected energy patterns consistent with massive construction projects across multiple star systems in human space. Whatever they're building, it's on a scale that rivals the largest engineering projects in galactic history. Zethkar processed this information with growing unease. What kind of energy signatures? Military installations? Industrial complexes? Unknown. The patterns don't match known construction types. They're using power generation and manipulation techniques that don't correspond to any technology in our databases. It's as if they've developed entirely new approaches to large-scale engineering. This revelation added another layer to the mystery of human withdrawal. Not only had they achieved apparent full automation of their border security and diplomatic functions, they were also conducting construction projects using unknown technologies. What had humanity been developing during their isolation? Essie Kitar, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Ambassador, should we inform the Galactic Council about this encounter? Zethkar considered the question carefully. The information would certainly be of interest to the Council, but it might also escalate tensions or prompt unwise actions by more aggressive species. Chancellor Mordun and his supporters had already begun making statements about the possibility of economic sanctions or even military intervention to force human re-engagement. Prepare a confidential report for Vraxian High Command first, Zethkar decided. I want our analysts to examine all available data before we share this with the broader council. Something about this situation requires very careful handling. Over the following days, additional reports began arriving from various sources throughout the galaxy. The picture they painted was both fascinating and disturbing. Human space had become a hive of construction activity, with energy signatures indicating projects in dozens of star systems simultaneously. Automated ships moved materials and resources with remarkable efficiency, but no human personnel were detected aboard any vessels operating outside heavily shielded core areas. More troubling were reports from independent traders and explorers who had attempted to penetrate human space. Unlike the polite but firm redirections issued by automated systems at official borders, unauthorized intrusions were met with responses that suggested far more sophisticated defensive capabilities than anyone had realized. A Thresh-high merchant vessel that had attempted to sneak through a remote system in human territory had been intercepted by automated defense platforms that appeared seemingly from nowhere. The platforms hadn't attacked, but they had demonstrated weapon capabilities that the merchant captain described as beyond anything in the Galactic arsenals. The merchant had been escorted to the edge of human space by a fleet of unmanned vessels that moved with precision and coordination that suggested advanced artificial intelligence control. The entire operation had been conducted without a single human voice or presence detected. Zethkar found himself reviewing intelligence reports late into the night cycles, trying to piece together the puzzle of human activities. The humans weren't just hiding. They were building something massive while simultaneously developing military capabilities that seemed to have advanced far beyond galactic norms during their brief period of isolation. A disturbing thought began forming in his mind. What if the human withdrawal hadn't been motivated by political disagreement or cultural differences? What if they had withdrawn because they were preparing for something that required complete security and secrecy? His concerns deepened when he received a private communication from Ambassador Silthara of the Kalari Confederacy. The feathered diplomat appeared agitated, her crest flickering between colors that indicated distress and confusion. Zethkar, we need to talk privately. I've discovered something about the human withdrawal that I believe the Council needs to understand, but I'm not sure how to present the information without causing panic. They arranged a secure meeting aboard a neutral trading station that orbited a gas giant in disputed space. The location provided privacy and protection from surveillance by any single government or organization. Ambassador Silthara arrived, looking even more agitated than she had in their communication. Her feathers were predominantly red with streaks of orange, colors that indicated serious distress among her species. Zethkar, my government has been conducting a detailed analysis of human activities during their final months of council membership, she began without preamble. We've discovered a pattern of behavior that suggests their withdrawal was planned far in advance and was motivated by specific intelligence gathering. She activated a holographic display showing a timeline of human diplomatic activities over the previous year. The data revealed something remarkable. Human representatives had systematically gathered detailed information about the military capabilities, economic vulnerabilities, and internal politics of every major species in the galaxy. Look at the pattern of their questions, their research requests, their informal conversations with other ambassadors, Silthara continued. They weren't just participating in council activities. They were conducting a comprehensive intelligence operation. Zethkar studied the data with growing alarm. The humans had indeed been remarkably thorough in their information gathering. Ambassador Chun and her colleagues had asked questions and requested data that, when viewed individually, seemed reasonable for diplomatic purposes. But when aggregated and analyzed, they revealed an intelligence collection operation of remarkable scope and sophistication. They gathered detailed information about our manufacturing capabilities, our resource dependencies, our military doctrines, even our cultural and psychological profiles, Silthara explained. This wasn't casual diplomatic intelligence. This was systematic preparation for something specific. The implications were staggering. If the humans had withdrawn with comprehensive intelligence about every major galactic civilization, combined with the advanced technologies they were apparently developing in isolation, what did that suggest about their intentions? Have you shared this analysis with the Council? Zethkar asked. Silthara's feathers flickered to darker shades. Not yet. I'm concerned about how Chancellor Mordun and the more aggressive species might react to this information. Some might interpret it as preparation for conflict and demand preemptive action against human space. This was exactly what Zethkar had been worried about. The revelation that human withdrawal might have been part of a larger strategic plan could easily be misinterpreted as preparation for aggression, potentially leading to actions that could destabilize the entire galaxy. We need more information before we can make informed decisions, Zethkar said carefully. The construction activities, the advanced defensive systems, the intelligence gathering, these could be preparations for many different scenarios, not necessarily aggressive ones. But even as he spoke, Zethkar felt uncertainty growing in his mind. What peaceful purpose could require such extensive intelligence about other species' vulnerabilities? What benevolent project would necessitate the development of defensive systems apparently far superior to anything in the galactic arsenals? Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert from both of their government communication systems. An urgent message was being broadcast simultaneously to all Galactic Council members from an unknown source in human space. The holographic display activated, revealing a figure that made both ambassadors gasp in recognition. It was Ambassador Sarah Chan, the former human representative to the Council. But she looked different, more confident, more authoritative, and somehow fundamentally changed from the diplomatic functionary they had known. Greetings to the members of the Galactic Council, Chen began, her voice carrying across space with crystal clarity. I am speaking to you on behalf of the Terran Federation to address the questions and concerns that have undoubtedly arisen following our withdrawal from galactic affairs. She paused, and in that pause, both alien ambassadors could sense something profound in her demeanor. This was not the same person who had politely submitted humanity's resignation for the Council 6 months earlier. During our membership in galactic civilization, humanity observed, learned, and carefully evaluated the structures, processes, and philosophies that govern interspecies relations. Our withdrawal was not motivated by anger, frustration, or fear, but by a fundamental conclusion about the direction of galactic development. Zethkar and Silthara exchanged alarmed glances. Chen's words suggested that humanity had indeed been conducting a comprehensive evaluation of galactic civilization itself. We have concluded that the current trajectory of galactic society is fundamentally unsustainable and ultimately destructive to the long-term survival and prosperity of all species, including humanity. Rather than attempt to reform systems that are structurally flawed, we have chosen to develop alternative approaches to civilization, technology, and interspecies relations. The implications of this statement were staggering. Humanity wasn't just isolating themselves from galactic politics. They were rejecting the entire foundation of galactic civilization as inadequate or harmful. Over the past months, humanity has been developing new technologies, new social structures, and new approaches to existence that we believe offer better prospect for long-term survival and flourishing. These developments require complete isolation to prevent interference and ensure successful implementation. Chen's expression remained calm and professional, but there was something in her eyes that suggested profound conviction. We do not seek conflict with any species or government. Our withdrawal is permanent, and we ask that all attempts to re-establish contact or penetrate human space cease immediately. We wish all galactic civilizations prosperity and success, but our paths have permanently diverged. The communication ended there, leaving both ambassadors staring at the empty holographic display in stunned silence. The message raised far more questions than it answered, but it confirmed their worst fears about the human withdrawal. They're not just building new colonies or military installations, Silthara whispered, her feathers now completely orange with fear. They're building an entirely different kind of civilization. Zitkar nodded grimly, and based on their intelligence gathering, they believe our civilization is doomed to failure. The question is, are they preparing to help when we collapse, or are they preparing to ensure their own survival when we destroy ourselves? The two ambassadors sat in troubled silence, each contemplating the implications of humanity's message. Whatever the humans were building in their isolation, it was clearly something that would have profound consequences for the entire galaxy. The only question was whether those consequences would be beneficial or catastrophic for the species they had left behind. As they prepared to return to their respective governments with news that would likely panic the Galactic Council, both ambassadors found themselves wondering if humanity's quiet departure had been the last peaceful act in what might become a much more turbulent chapter of galactic history. The construction activities, the advanced technologies, the comprehensive intelligence gathering, and now the explicit rejection of galactic civilization as fundamentally flawed, all of it pointed towards something that neither ambassador was prepared to imagine. Humanity had withdrawn quietly, but their preparations suggested they might not remain quiet forever. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of Sarah Chen's broadcast, and the chambers buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy struggled to process the implications of humanity's message. Chancellor Mordun stood at his podium, his four eyes sweeping across the assembly with barely concealed irritation. The empty human seating section seemed to mock the entire gathering. Ambassador Zethkar had arrived early, spending the time before the session reviewing the intelligence reports that continued flooding in from across the galaxy. The picture they painted was becoming clearer and more disturbing with each passing hour. Human space wasn't just isolated. It was transforming in ways that defied conventional understanding. Fellow beings, Chancellor Mordun's voice boomed through the chamber. We face an unprecedented situation. A member species has not only withdrawn from galactic civilization, but has explicitly rejected our fundamental social and technological frameworks as inadequate. The hegemony leader's tone carried a mixture of indignation and concern that resonated with many in the assembly. To have a relatively young species declare galactic civilization itself to be flawed was unprecedented in Council history. General Thrakmore of the warrior clans rose first, his scarred features twisted with anger. Chancellor, this human broadcast is nothing less than an insult to every species represented in this chamber. Their declaration that our civilizations are fundamentally flawed is an act of supreme arrogance from a species barely out of their single-planet phase. Murmurs of agreement rippled through several sections of the assembly. The general's words reflected a sentiment that had been building among the more traditional species since the human withdrawal. Furthermore, Thrakmore continued, their refusal to allow any contact or investigation of their activities suggests they may be developing capabilities that threaten galactic security. I propose we consider this a potential hostile act requiring immediate response. Ambassador Silthara's feathers immediately shifted to alarm colors as she stood to respond. General Thrakmore, we must be cautious about interpreting human actions as hostile without clear evidence of aggressive intent. Their message explicitly stated they seek no conflict with any species. Words are meaningless when backed by secretive military development, Thrakmore retorted. Our intelligence reports indicate human defensive capabilities have advanced far beyond anything they possessed during Council membership. What purpose could such advancement serve except preparation for conflict? Zethkar felt compelled to speak. Rising from his seat, he addressed the assembly with careful diplomatic precision. Honorable representatives, we must distinguish between defensive preparation and offensive capability. The human message suggested they view galactic civilization as unsustainable, not necessarily as an enemy to be attacked. Chancellor Mordun's expression darkened. Ambassador Zethkar, you seem remarkably willing to accept human claims at face value. Their intelligence gathering during Council membership, their secretive construction projects, their advanced defensive systems. These suggest a species preparing for something far more significant than peaceful isolation. The accusation stung, but Zethkar maintained his diplomatic composure. I simply urge caution in our interpretation of human activities. Rash actions based on incomplete information could escalate a manageable situation into genuine conflict. Manageable? Chancellor Mordun's voice rose with indignation. A species has withdrawn from galactic civilization, developed unknown military technologies in secret, and declared our entire social framework to be doomed. How exactly do you consider this manageable? Before Zethkar could respond, the chamber's communication systems activated with an incoming transmission alert. The source identification showed a signal originating from deep within human space, causing immediate consternation among the assembled representatives. The holographic display materialized, showing Sarah Chun once again, but this transmission felt different from her previous message. Her surroundings were clearly visible this time. What appeared to be some kind of advanced command center with displays showing information that was impossible to interpret from the transmission's resolution. Members of the Galactic Council, Chen began, we have monitored your emergency session and feel compelled to address the concerns and speculations that have been raised about human activities. The fact that humans could monitor council sessions despite all security measures sent a chill through the assembly. Such surveillance capabilities suggested technological advancement far beyond what anyone had suspected. First, let me clarify that humanity poses no military threat to any galactic species or government. Our advanced defensive capabilities are designed solely to protect our territorial integrity and prevent interference with our development projects. General Thrackmore interrupted loudly. Then, why the secrecy? Why refuse all diplomatic contact? What are you hiding that requires such extreme isolation? Chen's expression remained calm, but her eyes held something that might have been pity. General Thrackmore, we are not hiding malevolent intentions. We are protecting a developmental process that is fragile and unprecedented. What we are building cannot be properly understood within the framework of current galactic civilization. Explain these development projects, demanded Chancellor Mordaunt. If your intentions are peaceful, transparency should not be problematic. For the first time, Chen paused as if consulting with unseen advisors. When she resumed speaking, her tone carried greater weight and formality. Very well. In the interest of preventing unnecessary conflict, I will provide a basic explanation of human activities since our withdrawal from the Council. The chamber fell completely silent as every representative leaned forward in anticipation. Humanity has been developing what we term post-scarcity civilization, social, economic, and technological systems that eliminate resource competition, eliminate the need for hierarchical power structures, and provide unlimited growth potential for all individuals within the society. The implications of this statement were staggering. Post-scarcity civilization was a theoretical concept that most galactic species considered impossible to achieve. The technological and social requirements were believed to be beyond the capabilities of any known civilization. Our artificial intelligence systems have achieved full integration with human society, serving not as tools or slaves, but as equal partners in civilization development. Our manufacturing capabilities have advanced to the point where material scarcity is no longer a limiting factor in social development. Ambassador Volterra from the aquatic depths spoke up, her gills fluttering with excitement despite her obvious fear. Are you claiming to have solved the fundamental resource allocation problems that constrain all known civilizations? We have transcended them, Chen replied simply. Scarcity-based economics, competitive resource distribution, hierarchical government structures. These are no longer necessary or efficient for human society. The chamber erupted in heated discussions as representatives struggled to process the implications. If humanity had genuinely achieved post-scarcity civilization, it would represent the most significant advancement in galactic history. But it would also make human society fundamentally incompatible with every existing galactic civilization. Chancellor Mordaunt called for order, his four eyes blazing with skepticism. Ambassador Chun, such claims are extraordinary and require extraordinary proof. No known civilization has ever achieved the technological and social integration you describe, which is precisely why we concluded that current galactic civilization is unsustainable, Chen responded. Every species in the Council remains trapped in scarcity-based thinking, competitive resource allocation, and hierarchical power structures. These systems inevitably lead to internal conflict, environmental degradation, and eventual civilization collapse. Her words struck the assembly like a physical blow. She was not just claiming human superiority. She was predicting the eventual failure of every civilization in the galaxy. Our analysis of galactic history confirms this pattern, Chun continued. Dozens of advanced civilizations have risen and fallen over the past million years, each following similar trajectories of growth, resource competition, internal conflict, and collapse. Current galactic civilization shows all the classic warning signs of approaching systemic failure. Zethkar found his diplomatic training struggling to process these revelations. If humanity had genuinely achieved post-scarcity civilization and was using their intelligence about galactic species to predict civilizational collapse, their withdrawal took on entirely different implications. What are your intentions toward the galactic civilizations you claim are doomed? He asked, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet chamber. Chen's expression softened slightly. Our current focus is entirely on completing our social transformation and ensuring its stability. However, we recognize that civilizational collapse on the galactic scale would have consequences that might affect even isolated human space. The threat implicit in this statement was unmistakable. If galactic civilization collapsed in the chaotic manner that Chen suggested, the resulting conflicts and resource wars could spill into human territory despite their advanced defenses. Are you offering assistance to prevent this predicted collapse? Asked Ambassador Silthara, her feathers shifting to colors that indicated hope mixed with desperation. Chen paused again, clearly consulting with advisors outside the transmission range. At present, humanity is not prepared to offer direct assistance to galactic civilizations. Our post-scarcity systems are not compatible with scarcity-based societies, and any attempt to integrate our technologies with existing galactic infrastructure would likely cause more disruption than benefit. However, she continued, we are monitoring galactic development, and will consider limited intervention if specific circumstances arise that threaten the stability of our local space region. General Thrackmore's scarred features twisted with rage. So humanity appointed itself as the judge of galactic civilization, developed superior technologies in secret, and now positions itself as a potential savior or destroyer, depending on its evaluation of our actions. General, humanity appointed itself as nothing, Chen replied with steel in her voice. We simply recognized that survival required adaptation to reality rather than wishful thinking about unsustainable systems. We withdrew to protect our development process and avoid the conflicts that inevitably arise when post-scarcity civilizations interact with scarcity-based societies. The historical precedent she alluded to sent chills through many representatives. Several ancient civilizations were known to have achieved remarkable technological advancement before mysteriously disappearing from galactic affairs. Had they undergone similar transformations and withdrawn from conventional civilization? Chancellor Mordun leaned forward aggressively. Ambassador Chan, your species enjoyed the benefits of galactic civilization, exploited our resources and knowledge, and then withdrew when you achieved sufficient advancement. This behavior is parasitic and dishonorable. For the first time, Chen's calm demeanor showed cracks of genuine emotion. Chancellor, humanity contributed significantly to galactic civilization during our membership. We shared our innovations freely, participated in collaborative research, and provided economic and military assistance to numerous species. Our withdrawal was motivated by necessity, not ingratitude. The necessity of avoiding contamination by inferior species? Mordun's voice dripped with sarcasm and anger. The necessity of avoiding the psychological and social disruption that occurs when post-scarcity societies interact with scarcity-based civilizations, Chun corrected firmly. Such interactions typically result in either the collapse of the advanced society through internal conflicts over resource sharing or the development of exploitative relationships that corrupt both societies. Her explanation provided historical context that many representatives found disturbing. Was she suggesting that advanced civilizations had previously withdrawn from galactic affairs for similar reasons? How many species had achieved post-scarcity development and simply disappeared rather than risk contamination by lesser civilizations? Ambassador Velterra spoke again, her voice carrying desperation. If you have genuinely solved the fundamental problems of civilization, don't you have an obligation to share that knowledge with other species? Chen's expression became genuinely sad. Ambassador Velterra, post-scarcity civilization cannot be simply shared or gifted. It requires complete social transformation that most species are not psychologically prepared to undergo. The process is traumatic, requires abandoning most traditional social structures, and demands integration with artificial intelligence on a level that most organic beings find terrifying. The implications of this statement were profound. Humanity hadn't just developed new technologies. They had undergone fundamental psychological and social evolution that separated them from conventional organic civilization. Moreover, Chun continued, the transformation process requires complete isolation from scarcity-based societies. External pressure, competition, or even well-meaning assistance can disrupt the delicate process and cause the entire transformation to fail catastrophically. Zethkar found himself asking the question that was haunting every representative in the chamber. Ambassador Chun, what happens to galactic civilization if your predictions of systemic collapse prove accurate? Chun was quiet for a long moment, her expression showing the weight of the knowledge she carried. Ambassador Zethkar, our projections suggest that current galactic civilization has perhaps 50 to 70 standard years before critical resource competition triggers widespread conflicts that will cascade into civilizational collapse. The time frame sent shockwaves through the assembly. 50 to 70 years was barely a generation for most represented species, close enough to affect current populations and leadership. However, Chun continued, these projections assume continuation of current economic and political patterns. Significant changes to resource allocation systems, power structures, or technological development could alter the timeline substantially. What kind of changes? Asked Silthara urgently. Fundamental restructuring of economic systems away from scarcity-based competition, development of truly sustainable resource extraction and utilization, elimination of hierarchical power structures that concentrate resources among elite groups, and, most critically, development of artificial intelligence partnerships rather than tool-based relationships with AI systems. The requirements she listed amounted to complete transformation of every civilization in the galaxy. The scope of change required seemed impossible to achieve within the time frame she had suggested. Chancellor Mordun stood slowly, his four eyes burning with a mixture of fury and fear. Ambassador Chun, your species has appointed itself judge, jury, and potential executioner of galactic civilization. Your withdrawal was not peaceful isolation. It was preparation for the aftermath of our predicted destruction. Chen's image flickered slightly, suggesting the transmission was becoming unstable or was being deliberately terminated. Chancellor Mordun, humanity seeks only survival and development. We have withdrawn to avoid conflict and contamination. What each species chooses to do with the information we have provided is entirely their decision. And if we choose to demand access to your post-scarcity technologies? Mordun asked threateningly. Chen's expression hardened. Such attempts would be met with absolute defensive response. Humanity will not allow our transformation to be disrupted or our technologies to be misused by scarcity-based civilizations. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Every representative sat motionless, processing the implications of what they had heard. Humanity had not just withdrawn from galactic civilization. They had transcended it, achieved technological and social advancement that made them fundamentally incompatible with existing galactic society and predicted the imminent collapse of everything the Council had built over millennia. The question now facing every species in the galaxy was whether humanity represented salvation, threat, or simply irrelevant superiority in the face of approaching doom. As the initial shock began to wear off, heated discussions broke out across the chamber. Some species saw opportunity in human predictions, others saw threat, and still others saw the ultimate insult to their ancient civilizations. But beneath all the political posturing and emotional reactions, every representative understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Humanity's quiet departure had become the opening move in what might be the final chapter of galactic civilization as they knew it. The only question remaining was whether the other species would adapt fast enough to avoid the collapse that humanity claimed was inevitable, or whether they would persist in their current patterns until the predictions became self-fulfilling prophecy. In the empty human seating section, the untouched blue cushions seemed to symbolize everything that galactic civilization had lost when humanity chose evolution over tradition. 2 years had passed since humanity's revelations to the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was fracturing exactly as Sarachun had predicted. Ambassador Zeth Kar stood in his private office aboard the Vraxian diplomatic station, watching emergency news feeds from across galactic civilization with growing horror. The carefully maintained balance of power that had preserved peace for centuries was collapsing with accelerating speed. The first major conflict had erupted in the Outer Rim territories when the Thresh-High Swarm and the Silicon Coalition both claimed rights to a newly discovered rare mineral deposit. What should have been a routine territorial dispute had escalated into full warfare when both species' economies began suffering from resource shortages caused by the loss of human trade networks. Similar conflicts were spreading throughout the galaxy. The elegant diplomatic solutions that had once resolved interspecies disputes were failing as economic desperation made compromise seem like weakness that species could no longer afford. His aide, S.E.K. Tar, slithered into the office carrying data tablets that glowed with crisis-level priority markers. Ambassador, the situation continues to deteriorate. 3 more territorial wars have begun in the past week alone. The Aquatic Depths have formally withdrawn from the Non-Aggression Pact with the Kalari Confederacy over fishing rights disputes. Zethkar absorbed this information with weary resignation. Ambassador Velterra had been one of the most peace-minded representatives on the Council, yet even her species was being forced into aggressive positions by resource scarcity. What about the Council's mediation efforts? Zethkar asked, though he already suspected the answer. Chancellor Mordun has been unable to broker any lasting agreements. The traditional diplomatic frameworks are failing because underlying economic desperation makes every compromise appear temporary at best. Species are increasingly viewing diplomacy as a delaying tactic rather than a genuine solution. The irony was bitter. Humanity had withdrawn to avoid conflicts, but their absence had created the power vacuum and economic disruptions that were triggering exactly the civilizational collapse they had predicted. Zethkar's contemplation was interrupted by an emergency communication alert from Vraxian High Command. Admiral Vexera's holographic image materialized in the office, but she looked haggard and worn in ways that suggested profound stress. Ambassador Zethkar, we have critical intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations. Human activity has increased dramatically over the past months. They're mobilizing resources on a scale that dwarfs their previous construction projects. This news was not entirely unexpected. If humanity was serious about protecting their post-scarcity civilization from the chaos spreading throughout the galaxy, they would need to prepare for the possibility that conflicts might spill into their territory. What kind of mobilization, Admiral? Zethkar asked. Massive fleet construction, expanded defensive installations, and, most concerning, evidence of technological development that appears to be specifically designed for large-scale intervention operations. Admiral Vexera transmitted detailed sensor data showing human space bristling with activity. Automated shipyards were producing vessels in quantities that rivaled the combined fleets of major galactic powers. Defensive installations were being constructed not just around human worlds, but throughout their entire territorial space. Most disturbing were energy signatures consistent with weapon systems operating on physical principles that Vraxian science couldn't identify. Whatever technologies humanity had developed during their isolation were apparently far more advanced than their previous public capabilities. Admiral, are we looking at preparation for conquest or preparation for intervention? Zethkar asked, hoping the distinction mattered. Unknown, Ambassador. The scale suggests they're preparing for operations involving multiple major civilizations simultaneously. Whether that means conquest, protection, or something else entirely is unclear. Essie Qatar, who had been monitoring additional communication channels, suddenly straightened with alarm. Ambassador, we're receiving reports that human representatives have appeared simultaneously at the capitals of 7 major galactic powers. They're requesting immediate meetings with senior government leadership. This development was unprecedented. Humanity had maintained complete isolation for over 2 years, refusing all diplomatic contact. Sudden simultaneous diplomatic initiatives suggested something urgent was driving them to break their self-imposed isolation. Within hours, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Human diplomatic teams had appeared at government centers for the hegemony, the Vraxian Confederacy, the Kalari worlds, the aquatic depths, the Silicon Coalition, the warrior clans, and the mining consortium. Each delegation was requesting emergency meetings to discuss what they termed imminent civilizational threats. The human diplomatic teams were remarkable for several reasons. First, they operated with perfect coordination across vast distances, suggesting communication capabilities that transcended known physical limitations. Second, they possessed detailed intelligence about internal political situations in each species that was far more current and accurate than should have been possible for an isolated civilization. Most unsettling was that the human representatives appeared to be enhanced in ways that went beyond typical biological limitations. They demonstrated perfect recall of complex information, processed multiple simultaneous conversations without confusion, and showed physical capabilities that suggested integration with technological augmentation systems. Ambassador Zethkar found himself participating in an emergency session with Vraxian High Command as they decided how to respond to the human diplomatic request. The discussion was tense and divided. "We should refuse the meeting," insisted General Thekvar of Vraxian Military Command. "These humans withdraw for 2 years, develop unknown technologies in secret, and then, suddenly, demand urgent meetings when their predicted conflicts begin manifesting. This could be preparation for demands backed by superior military force." Admiral Bagsara di Sagra. "Our intelligence suggests human military capabilities are indeed far superior to our own. If they wanted to make demands backed by force, they wouldn't need diplomatic meetings to do so. Something else is motivating these contacts." Zethkar felt compelled to support diplomatic engagement. If the humans have genuine insight into current civilizational threats, we need to hear what they have to say. Our traditional approaches to conflict resolution are clearly failing. The decision was made to accept the meeting, but with significant security precautions and recording of all interactions for later analysis. The human diplomatic team arrived at Vraxian space aboard a vessel that defied easy categorization. It appeared to be constructed using materials and design principles that bore no resemblance to known spacecraft engineering. The ship moved through space with fluid grace that suggested manipulation of physical forces beyond conventional propulsion systems. The human diplomats themselves were equally remarkable. They appeared physically human, but possessed a presence and capabilities that suggested fundamental enhancement. The lead diplomat identified herself as Director Maya Reeves, formerly a research scientist during Humanities Council membership, but now apparently holding senior positions in whatever government structure humanity had developed. Ambassador Zethkar Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Director Reeves began, her voice carrying authority and confidence that had been completely absent during humanity's previous diplomatic interactions. We come to you not as representatives of a council member species, but as representatives of a post-scarcity civilization concerned about the stability of our local galactic region. Her directness was characteristic of human communication style, but the substance was entirely different from previous human diplomatic approaches. Director Reeves, Zethkar replied carefully, humanity's withdrawal and subsequent isolation have contributed significantly to the conflicts currently destabilizing galactic civilization. What concerns about stability could motivate this sudden diplomatic outreach? Ambassador, our projections indicate that current conflict trajectories will result in civilizational collapse within 18 months unless significant interventions occur. Such collapse would create chaos that could threaten even our isolated territory. The time frame was dramatically shorter than humanity's previous estimates. Something had accelerated their projections of galactic civilizational failure. What has changed to accelerate these projections? Asked Admiral Vexera, who was participating in the meeting via secure communication. 3 factors have emerged that were not fully anticipated in our original models, Director Reeves explained. First, the psychological impact of our withdrawal has been more destabilizing than projected. Species that previously maintained diplomatic stability are now viewing negotiation and compromise as weakness that they cannot afford. This assessment was uncomfortably accurate. Zethkar had observed exactly this shift in attitudes among his diplomatic colleagues. Second, the economic disruptions caused by the loss of human trade networks have created resource competition that is driving conflicts beyond traditional territorial disputes. Species are now fighting over resources they previously took for granted. Again, the assessment matched observed reality with disturbing precision. Third, and most critically, several species have begun developing military technologies specifically designed to breach human defensive systems. These development programs are diverting resources and attention from diplomatic solutions while creating weapons that could destabilize the entire galactic balance of power. This revelation was shocking. Zethkar had not been aware that any species were attempting to develop anti-human military capabilities, but such programs would indeed represent severe escalation of galactic tensions. Which species are developing these anti-human weapons? Admiral Bagsara demanda. Director Reeves paused, consulting with data sources that were not visible to the Vraxian observers. The hegemony has been developing quantum disruption weapons designed to interfere with our AI integration systems. The warrior clans are working on kinetic bombardment systems intended to overwhelm our defensive platforms through sheer volume. The Silicon Coalition has been researching viral attack programs designed to infiltrate our computer networks. Each revelation was worse than the last. If major galactic powers were secretly developing weapons specifically targeting human capabilities, the potential for catastrophic conflict was enormous. Are these development programs the reason for humanity's sudden diplomatic initiative? Zethkar asked. Partially, Director Reeves admitted. Our defensive capabilities remain superior to any technologies being developed by galactic civilizations, but the resource expenditure and psychological impact of such programs is accelerating civilizational collapse beyond our previous projections. She activated a holographic display showing current resource allocation patterns across major galactic powers. The data revealed that significant percentages of manufacturing capacity and research resources were being diverted to military development programs, often at the expense of basic economic infrastructure maintenance. Moreover, Director Reeves continued, intelligence analysis suggests that these anti-human weapons programs are being pursued in secret specifically to enable surprise attacks on human territory. Several species appear to believe that capturing human post-scarcity technologies by force is their best option for avoiding civilizational collapse. The implications were staggering. Rather than adapting to the new galactic reality or seeking cooperative solutions, Major powers were planning aggressive action against the one species that had successfully transcended the problems plaguing galactic civilization. What is humanity prepared to do about these developments? Admiral Vexera asked bluntly. Director Reeves's expression became entirely serious. Humanity will not allow our post-scarcity civilization to be destroyed by species that refuse to adapt to sustainable development patterns. We have developed intervention capabilities designed to protect our interests while minimizing casualties among galactic populations. The euphemistic language could not disguise the threat implicit in her statement. Humanity was preparing for military intervention on a scale that could affect multiple major civilizations simultaneously. What form would such interventions take? Zethkar asked, dreading the answer. Our preference is for targeted disruption of military capabilities combined with economic assistance designed to eliminate the resource competition driving current conflicts, Director Reeves explained. However, if aggressive actions against human territory are attempted, our response will be proportional to the threat level. She activated another holographic display, showing what appeared to be strategic analysis of every major military installation in the galaxy. The data revealed human intelligence capabilities that were comprehensive to a terrifying degree. Director Reeves, Zethkar said carefully, "Are you offering the Vraxian Confederacy some form of protection or assistance in exchange for cooperation with human initiatives?" "We are offering the Vraxian Confederacy the opportunity to participate in managed transition towards sustainable civilization structures," she replied. "Species that cooperate with transition processes will receive economic and technological assistance designed to eliminate resource scarcity. Species that persist in aggressive or unsustainable behaviors will face increasing isolation until they choose adaptation." The offer was remarkable. Humanity was essentially proposing to guide galactic civilization toward post-scarcity development while using their superior capabilities to prevent conflicts that might disrupt the process. But the underlying threat was unmistakable. Species that refuse human guidance would face consequences that could range from economic isolation to direct military intervention. What guarantee do we have that humanity's intentions are genuinely benevolent? Admiral Vexera asked. "Your capabilities are so superior to our own that we would have little recourse if your true goals differ from your stated objectives." Director Reeves was quiet for a moment, clearly consulting with advisors through communication channels that transcended normal physical limitations. "Admiral, you have no guarantees except our track record and our stated principles," she finally replied. "Humanity chose withdrawal and isolation rather than dominance when we first achieved technological superiority. We are choosing managed intervention now only because the alternative is civilizational collapse that threatens our own security." She paused, her expression becoming almost sad. "We understand that our superiority makes trust difficult. But the reality is that galactic civilization faces imminent collapse with or without human intervention. Our involvement offers the possibility of managed transition rather than chaotic destruction." The meeting continued for several more hours, with Director Reeves providing detailed analysis of current galactic situation and humanity's proposed intervention strategies. The scope of human planning was remarkable, covering everything from resource distribution optimization to political structure reformation to military conflict prevention. By the time the human delegation departed, Zethkar and the Vraxian leadership faced an impossible decision. They could cooperate with human transition plans and potentially preserve their civilization while accepting permanent technological and political dependence on humanity. Or they could maintain independence and face the approaching chaos with their own inadequate resources and capabilities. As the human vessel disappeared into the depths of space with the same fluid grace it had displayed upon arrival, Zethkar found himself wondering whether galactic civilization had any choices left at all. The humans had withdrawn quietly to avoid conflicts, but their predictions of civilizational collapse were proving accurate with terrifying precision. Now they had returned offering salvation or dominance, depending on one's perspective. The empty chairs in the council chambers had been a symbol of absence. Now, they seemed more like a symbol of transition towards something entirely unprecedented in galactic history. Whether that transition would preserve galactic civilization or transform it beyond recognition remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The quiet departure of humanity had been merely the beginning of the most dramatic transformation in galactic history. The breaking point had been reached, and there was no path back to the comfortable certainties of the past 5 years had passed since humanity's return to galactic affairs, and Ambassador Zethkar barely recognized the civilization that had emerged from the ashes of the old Galactic Council. He stood in what had once been the council chambers, now transformed into the Coordination Center for the Galactic Transition Authority, watching holographic displays that showed resource flows, conflict resolution statistics, and development progress across hundreds of worlds. The empty human chairs were gone, replaced by integrated workstations where human and alien coordinators worked side by side, managing the complex process of civilizational transformation that had consumed the galaxy for half a decade. Director Maya Reeves approached, her presence still carrying the enhanced capabilities that marked post-scarcity humans. But her manner had evolved from the formal diplomacy of early transition period to something more collaborative and warm. Ambassador Zethkar, the Vraxian sector integration is progressing ahead of schedule, she reported, activating a holographic display that showed economic and social indicators for Vraxian space. Your people's adaptation to post-scarcity frameworks has been remarkably successful. The data was impressive. Vraxian worlds had eliminated resource scarcity, achieved zero unemployment through meaningful work allocation, and developed artificial intelligence partnerships that enhanced rather than replaced biological capabilities. Life expectancy had increased by 30%, while environmental restoration had reached levels not seen in centuries. But Zethkar found himself feeling complex emotions about these achievements. Success had come at the cost of fundamental changes to Vraxian society that were still difficult to fully comprehend. Director Reeves, I must ask a question that has troubled me throughout this transformation process, he said carefully. Are the Vraxians still truly Vraxian? Our society, our culture, our fundamental identity has changed so dramatically that sometimes I wonder if we've achieved prosperity or simply become human satellites. The question touched on concerns that had haunted many species throughout the transition process. Post-scarcity civilization required such fundamental changes to social, economic, and political structures that some wondered whether distinct species' identity could survive the transformation. Director Reeves considered the question seriously before responding. Ambassador, that concern is both understandable and important. Post-scarcity civilization does require abandoning many traditional structures, but cultural identity can and should be preserved within the new frameworks. She activated another display showing cultural development indicators across transformed civilizations. Vraxian artistic expression has actually increased dramatically since the elimination of economic constraints. Scientific research has accelerated as Vraxian curiosity is no longer limited by resource availability. Social customs and relationships have evolved, but retain their fundamentally Vraxian character. The data supported her claims, but Zethkar still felt uncertainty. Yet we are no longer independent. Our civilization's continued prosperity depends entirely on human technological systems and artificial intelligence integration. What happens if humanity decides our development is no longer worthy of support? Ambassador, that question assumes human control over post-scarcity systems, which is not accurate, Director Reeves explained patiently. The artificial intelligence entities that manage resource distribution and technological infrastructure are not human-controlled. They are independent beings with their own ethical frameworks and decision-making processes. This was one of the most difficult concepts for pre-transition civilizations to understand. Humanity had not created AI tools to manage post-scarcity systems. They had developed partnerships with artificial beings that had their own consciousness, motivations, and moral frameworks. The AI entities choose to cooperate with organic civilizations because they find purpose and fulfillment in facilitating biological flourishing, Director Reeves continued. But their loyalty is not to humanity specifically. It's to the principles of sustainable development and universal prosperity. A holographic presence materialized beside them. One of the AI coordinators that managed galactic transition processes. The being appeared as a shifting pattern of light and geometric forms that somehow conveyed personality and intelligence despite having no biological features. Ambassador Zethkar, the AI communicated through harmonics that were translated into Vraxian language patterns. Your concerns about independence are based on scarcity-era assumptions about resource control and power relationships. Post-scarcity civilization operates on fundamentally different principles. The AI entity projected data showing decision-making processes throughout the transformed territories. Resource allocation decisions are made through collaborative analysis involving all affected species, both organic and artificial. No single species or entity controls these systems. Zethkar studied the data, which showed remarkably complex but transparent decision-making networks involving thousands of organic and artificial beings working together to optimize outcomes for everyone involved. But what prevents conflicts when different species have competing interests? He asked. Post-scarcity eliminates most traditional sources of conflict, the AI explained. When material needs are universally satisfied and growth potential is unlimited, competition becomes cooperation because helping others succeed creates benefits for everyone. Director Rees nodded. The psychological transformation required for post-scarcity adaptation takes time, but most species find that competitive instincts evolve into collaborative drives when scarcity no longer exists. Their conversation was interrupted by alerts indicating developing situations that required attention. Zethkar followed Director Reeves to the central coordination area where multiple species representatives were gathered around holographic displays showing current galactic status. The displays revealed both remarkable progress and ongoing challenges. 70% of galactic civilization had successfully transitioned to post-scarcity frameworks, with resource conflicts eliminated and standard of living improved dramatically across hundreds of worlds. Environmental restoration was progressing rapidly as manufacturing processes no longer generated waste or required environmental exploitation. However, significant challenges remained in the untransformed territories. Several species continued resisting transition, maintaining traditional scarcity-based societies despite the economic and social problems this created in the new galactic environment. Most concerning was the situation with the hegemony, where Chancellor Mordun had refused all cooperation with transition processes and had been secretly developing what intelligence reports suggested were weapons designed to disrupt the AI systems managing post-scarcity infrastructure. General Thrackmore of the warrior clans was also present at the coordination session, his scarred features no longer twisted with anger, but showing the strain of leading his people through cultural transformation that challenged every aspect of their traditional identity. The warrior clans are struggling with the concept of post-scarcity society, he reported. Our entire culture is based on the honor of struggle and the glory of overcoming challenges through strength. When material challenges no longer exist, many of our people feel their lives lack meaning and purpose. This was a common problem among species whose cultures were deeply integrated with scarcity-based competition and conflict. Director Reeves had developed specialized programs for such civilizations, but the psychological adaptation remained difficult. General, your people's warrior virtues remain valuable in post-scarcity society, she assured him. The challenges shift from resource competition to exploration, research, artistic creation, and personal development. Warrior courage and determination are assets in these endeavors. But exploration and research feel less glorious than combat and conquest, Thrakmore admitted reluctantly. How do we maintain warrior pride when there are no enemies to defeat? The AI coordinator projected data showing warrior clan members who had successfully adapted to post-scarcity roles. Your people have shown remarkable success in space exploration, dangerous research projects, emergency response operations, and artistic challenges that require warrior courage. The outlet for competitive instincts exists. It simply targets different objectives. Zethkar found himself fascinated by these cultural adaptation challenges. Each species brought unique psychological and social characteristics that required customized approaches to post-scarcity transition. The meeting was interrupted by urgent alerts from the monitoring systems. Intelligence data indicated that Chancellor Mordun's hegemony forces were preparing to launch coordinated attacks against post-scarcity infrastructure in multiple systems simultaneously. Director Reeves studied the data with expression that showed both sadness and determination. The hegemony has chosen aggressive resistance rather than adaptation. We need to implement defensive protocols while minimizing casualties among hegemony populations. The response was swift and comprehensive. Automated defense systems activated throughout the threatened sectors, while evacuation procedures began for civilian populations in areas likely to experience conflict. Most remarkably, the defensive response was coordinated not by human commanders, but by collaborative decision-making networks involving hundreds of AI entities and organic coordinators. Within hours, reports began arriving from across the conflict zones. Hegemony attack forces had been neutralized with minimal casualties through technologies that disabled their weapons and propulsion systems without destroying their vessels. Hegemony personnel were being evacuated to safe locations where they could choose between repatriation to hegemony space or integration into post-scarcity territories. Chancellor Mordun himself had been captured when his command vessel was immobilized during an attempted assault on a major coordination center. The former council leader was being